Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and there's a lot of injuries in week 4, so let's not waste any time. Let's get into all of the player news and then update my rankings. I'm also going to make some audibles on some of my win-loss picks and picks against the spread. I want to get it right, so stay tuned for the end of the video if you want all of my final win-loss picks heading in to Sunday. But let's begin with the healthy rosters, some positive news first. If you have any Atlanta Falcons, Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, Indianapolis Colts, New York Jets, Tennessee Titans, or Denver Broncos, with the exception of Audric Estime, then those players are healthy. These are all of the healthy offenses, at least for fantasy, on the screen here. Let's start with the injured players, though, in Arizona with Trey McBride, who is out with a concussion, and this really opens the door for Michael Wilson to get as many targets as last week. He was a huge part of this offense, and I do think they are going to lean on him. It's a very good matchup against Washington, and you want to chase it all year long. I do think Michael Wilson has Juwan Jennings level appeal. I do think he's a legit flex play this week. Maybe not that good as Juwan Jennings, but I do think very safe floor this week. In Carolina, Adam Thielen, who was placed on IR earlier in the week, opens the door for Diontae Johnson, but he's questionable with a groin injury of his own. He did not practice Thursday, limited on Friday. However, it sounds like it was just precautionary and due to conditions of a wet field. So I'm not worried about it. I expect him to play. They really need him, and I still have him as a legit starter, but I did downgrade him slightly due to this news. Jonathan Brooks, though, their running back that they drafted in the second round, has been on IR up to this point, but could be activated as soon as week 5. Reports indicate he is in the final stages of his recovery, and with Chuba Hubbard's value last week, that could be a league winner coming off of IR next week. In Chicago, though, good news for Caleb Williams. He does have Keenan Allen most likely active for this game. He was full in practice on Friday, and that means he will suit up. So Keenan Allen does diminish the value of Cole Kmet and Rome Odunze. They're not as safe anymore, but definitely helps Caleb Williams unlock his true potential. So that's an interesting situation. It's a great matchup against the Rams. I think Caleb is a legit streamer this week. In Cleveland, David Njoku out once again, so the door is still open for Jerry Jeudy, but not as wide open as some may have hoped. Amari Cooper is fully active, and we were a little worried at the end of last week's game. He did have an undisclosed injury that we were worried about, but not anymore. He will suit up. Not worried about Amari Cooper. Nick Chubb, though, might not be ready to come back off of IR as soon as week 5. The IR window can open as soon as next week, but they will be evaluating him. According to reports, he's doing well, but I think they're going to be cautious. I think if he does return, it'll be closer to their bye. I believe it is in week 10. In Detroit, Sam LaPorta is active, and we were a little worried about him earlier in the week, but full in practice on Friday, he will suit up. It is the last game of the week, so there aren't many options to pivot to. Thankfully, LaPorta is fully available. But in Green Bay, though, Jordan Love will play this week. He was limited all week in practice, and he almost played last Sunday as well, so not a surprise. It is looking like the Jordan Love show in Green Bay this week, and that's a big upgrade to all of his weapons. Definitely more touchdown upside, and you definitely trust the passing game a lot more. But the matchup against Minnesota is not good. I'm still picking the Vikings to win. They were embarrassed the last time these two teams played. But in Houston, Joe Mixon, questionable. I do think plays. Didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, but was limited on Friday, and that is a very good sign. Odds are he suits up. They might be cautious. It is a game time decision, but we expect to get some information before the night is over, and we will have a bit more clarity going into Sunday morning whether or not he'll suit up. But if he does, Cam Akers is not a player you can trust at all. Akers loses a lot of value, and you cannot start him. Mixon would be the guy. Tank Dell, though, is out, and that means a lot more targets you can trust heading towards Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. They're must starts this week. However, Dalton Schultz is an interesting flyer at tight end, kind of touchdown dependent, but definitely risky. He's not done anything up to this point. Probably gets close to 5-6 targets this week, though. In Jacksonville, Evan Engram is out, so Brenton Strange still a legit streaming tight end as well. Gabe Davis, though, questionable with a shoulder injury, limited all week in practice, expecting to play, but not safe enough to start. In Kansas City, interesting developments in their running back room. Isaiah Pacheco still on IR, but Kareem Hunt will be active for this game. He was on the practice squad last week, so Carson Steele had an opportunity to shine, and he was okay, did not find the end zone. Now it's more crowded, and I'd be a bit worried about fully trusting any one Chiefs running back, especially next week when CEH has an opportunity to return as well. Maybe he won't, maybe he'll stay on IR, but when he's available, it's going to be very crowded, very hard to bet on a single Chiefs running back if CEH does come back. So we'll see. We'll learn a lot if Kareem Hunt actually has a role at all in this game. But in LA for the Chargers, both tackles, Rashawn Slater is out, Joe Alt not expected to play, and they have a bye in week 5. So why risk it? If they're not active, then J.K. Dobbins is not a safe option at all. Justin Herbert will not be as well protected against a difficult defense. This team could tear him up with the blitz. So not excited about Justin Herbert's odds to finish this game. I don't even think he should, but I think he will. He's been limited all week in practice, and I'm sure he wants to play. It's going to be hard to keep him off the field, but we'll see what happens. Maybe he toughs it out with the bye next week. He at least gets a full 2 weeks of rest before they play in week 6. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think you can trust really any Charger in this game with the injuries to the tackles. In the Rams offense, though, Cooper Kupp is out once again, but could return next week. He is starting to work without a cast, and that's obviously good news. Puka Nacua, though, still on IR, won't come back until after the bye in week 6. In Las Vegas, surprise addition to the injury report, Davante Adams is out with a hamstring injury. He did not practice Friday after being limited on Thursday. So not good for him, but definitely more targets available for Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and even Trey Tucker. Michael Mayer is out as well. So they really need to rely on those 3 weapons. Maybe Alexander Madison also gets more involved, but it's hard to pick them to win this game. Max Crosby is also doubtful, and it's a real prove-it test. Big game coming off that loss to the Panthers. In Miami, Raheem Mostert, questionable with a chest injury, has been practicing in limited fashion this week. I do expect him to play, just not on 100% of snaps as usual. So that impacts DeVonta a little bit. He moves down slightly, but it kind of gets negated because the offense is a bit saved here by Tyler Huntley. Not completely. He's not the same guy as Tua, but he's definitely better than Tim Boyle and Skylar Thompson. So I do think Tyreek Hill is the main beneficiary here. He was able to lock on to a target like Mark Andrews when he played in Baltimore a couple years ago, and Tyler Huntley probably does the same with a guy like Tyreek Hill. So Tyreek is a lot safer with Huntley. He's definitely in your lineup. You should trust him. The volume will be there for at least double-digit targets, and that's all you can ask for without Tua. But in Minnesota, Jordan Addison is active. He will play, and that means Jalen Naylor has no streaming value at all. So Addison is the flex option, and Sam Darnold probably gains a bit of value as well with another weapon. He'll be fully unlocked once TJ Hockenson comes back, but at least for now, that's not the case. Hockenson remains out till at least week 7 after the bye. In New Orleans, Alvin Kamara, questionable with a hip and rib injury, did not practice Wednesday, but limited Thursday, Friday. I think based on his age, he's 29, and his veteran status in this offense, he can have some days of rest and it not worry you. So I expect him to play. I'm not worried about Kamara at all. Obviously, Jamal and Taysom Hill are more interesting if he doesn't play, but I'm not worried about it. I'm still starting Kamara with confidence. However, Chris Olave is a true game time decision. He was limited in practice Friday with a hamstring injury after being full earlier in the week, and this could be like a Davante Adams situation. So it happened one day later. If it is a serious issue, he might not play, and Shaheed might be their best option. But I don't really bump up Shaheed that much in that situation. Shaheed is still very boom bust no matter what, and he's not really designed to be the number one focus of a defense. So worried about Shaheed if that happens. I think Kamara is really the only benefactor. Carr loses value, and the Falcons defense is a bit more trustworthy. So I'm actually going to pick the Falcons to win. I'll remind you later at the end of the video, but Kendre Miller might return in week 5. He has been on IR up to this point. We'll see about him. In Philly, Devontae Smith out with a concussion, and that's a big upgrade for Goddard, especially with the news that just came in on my phone. A.J. Brown has been ruled out. He will not play with that hamstring injury. So Jalen Hurts is not that safe, and I really worry about this offense working out without both of their top 2 receivers. They still have Saquon, but they're really going to need to rely on him heavily. Goddard, though, is a must start, probably the best tight end you can play on the week. But bummer, no AJ Brown this week. That is not great. But in Pittsburgh, Jaylen Warren out as well. Cordero Patterson will fill his shoes, but Najee Harris, I think, is the guy you want. Has workhorse potential this week, is active. Have no worries with his injury status. He will play against the Colts. It's an excellent matchup, so Najee is locked in to the top 20 this week. Najee's an excellent start against the Colts. In Seattle, though, Kenneth Walker looks like he'll play, questioned with an oblique injury, limited Thursday, Friday. Game on Monday, expect him to play, and that means Charbonnet is no longer the guy you are starting. Walker would be top 20, but it's a bad matchup, not the best spot against the Lions. Noah Fant, limited with a toe injury, but expected to play. No one is worried about it. It seems like he's had this problem for a while. In San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey is out, and he's back from Germany, and at least for now, you are still trusting Jordan Mason. However, not as much because George Kittle is active, and it looks like so is Deebo. Deebo is practicing limited on Thursday, Friday, did not practice Wednesday, but is moving in the right direction. Game time decision, and I do think he plays, and this game means a lot. They do need the win. Kittle, though, fully active, fully good to go. So the big winner here is Brock Purdy. He has all of his weapons, at least without McCaffrey, and he's definitely going to be more viable in the red zone. Touchdowns have been the only thing missing from his game consistently. Last week it hit, and we saw his upside. So I love Purdy this week. They will win the game, and I think he will go off for 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards. But I'm a little more worried about Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings with this situation. It's not clear who's their number 1 receiver. It could be anyone, and any single player could get phased out of the offense any given week as well. Ayuk has not proven anything yet. Jennings looks fantastic, and Deebo is banged up. So who will burn you? Who will hit? It's a little more dicey, and that's why I did adjust all of my rankings on every Niner this week. In Tampa, though, Bucky Irving has a hamstring injury, did not practice on Thursday, but was limited Wednesday, Friday, and I do expect him to play. So Rashad maybe will hold on to his job if Irving is actually banged up, but Irving is threatening to steal it outright. I'd be worried about Rashad. Jalen McMillan, though, doubtful, added to the injury report Friday with a hamstring injury cropped up late in practice. So he is not going to play, and that means Mike Evans is safer in the red zone. He will not get vultured. McMillan has scored 2 touchdowns so far this year. So Evans is much safer. You already trusted Godwin, an upgrade for them. In Washington, the last team to mention, Austin Ekeler is out, and Brian Robinson will be getting a ton of targets this week. Brian Robinson, a must start in your lineup. And Zach Ertz also probably gets a few more targets. Same with Terry. Terry had a great game last week while Ekeler was out as well. And you definitely feel more confident if a big piece of the target share is missing this week. Ekeler had been a consistent part of the passing game. So that's it for the injury updates. Now let's update my rankings where there's a lot to mention. At running back, I am bumping down Jordan Mason. He's still in the same tier as a guy like Derrick Henry for me. However, he's on the bottom end of the spectrum because he's not catching passes. And with Deebo and Kittle now active, there's a lot less likelihood he finds the end zone. So we saw last week without it, he's more of a floor play. I still really trust his floor. I think you have to start him, but I don't think he's a top 5 option anymore. He moves down 8 spots because this offense is now fully healthy, except for McCaffrey. So I do prefer a guy like James Conner straight up because Conner will be catching passes. It would be a big bounce back for him. Last week was bad. And with no Trey McBride, they definitely will lean on him more in the red zone. So love James Conner. He's top 10. Jordan Mason falls 8 spots. That's accounting for all the differences here in the rankings. But I did swap Brian Robinson and Aaron Jones, where with no Ekeler, I just trust the volume so much for B-Rob. And while Aaron Jones has played excellent, it is a revenge game, and maybe it's a bad one for Jones. There is a world where he gets shut down. He probably does find the end zone, though, so that's why I still rank him top 15. I would still start him. This week, the volume has been good, but I prefer Brian Robinson. I did upgrade Najee Harris 2 spots overall. He jumps Devin Singletary as well as Joe Mixon, who now enters the ranks. Najee, I think, is very safe without Jaylen Warren. He feels locked into 20 touches, and it's been an excellent matchup. He could be very efficient and find the end zone. I do trust running backs against the Colts. So he moves up 2 spots, and then Joe Mixon enters the top 20. If he's going to play, he's a must start. But I would worry a little bit about his snap share. It might not be guaranteed given the injury status. He's a bit older, and they do have a lot invested in him for not just this year, multiple years in the future. So Mixon at number 18 might not get a full 30 touches like we saw in week 1. Kenneth Walker, though, enters the top 20, but I'm worried about this matchup, though the Lions are really tough, and we saw James Conner put up a massive bust last week. So I'm worried about his pass catching ability. I would have ranked Charbonnet higher if he was the starter because he does catch more passes. However, Walker is still too talented to bench at number 19. I think he is still in your lineup. So that's why Singletary moves down. He gets jumped by Mixon and Walker, and everybody else moves down a little bit collectively overall. So not too many other changes inside the top 30. It's all kind of the same, but some players I'm not starting still despite moving up in the rankings would be Raheem Mostert versus the Titans. I don't think he's healthy enough to see a full workload, and the offense is not as good without Tua. Zach Charbonnet drops down to number 37. With Kenneth Walker, he is nowhere near as safe. I did upgrade Cordell Patterson 8 spots, but still not inside the top 40 at 41. No thanks with Cordy P. And then lastly, Cam Akers is not safe anymore. Number 46 in my rankings. Might vulture a touchdown. It is possible, but without it, you get nothing. And even with it, you probably don't get 10 points. So no thanks with Akers. He is too risky. Those are my updated running back rankings overall. Now let's pivot to wide receiver, where I've made a ton of changes. 4 players get brought back in who I didn't think would play. 3 players get taken out. There's a healthy quarterback. There's some tight ends who are hurt. There's a lot of changes with more than 10 players. So the whole thing is kind of all different. Let's just run through this as quickly as possible. I did swap Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamar Chase because with Sam LaPorta healthy, St. Brown gets a tougher matchup, and I do think Jamar is a safer bet. So I swapped the 2 of them. I did upgrade Nico Collins, though, 3 spots without Tank Dell. The volume is so locked in. You trust this offense tremendously. So Nico Collins, top 4 now. He was previously top 7, and these guys moved down to 1 spot. Next player moving would be Tyreek Hill, moving up 4 spots because Tyler Huntley is far safer of a quarterback. So kind of like Malik Neighbors with Daniel Jones, a quarterback you don't fully trust, but a wide receiver with so much talent, you have to start them. So DK moves down 1 spot. So does DJ Moore. He gets jumped, but Stephon Diggs moves up 8 spots. He is now a true must-start player. Without Tank Dell, you know he's getting 9, 10 plus targets. Last week he had 12. I love Stephon Diggs this week. DJ Moore still top 13, but Zay Flowers I think is very safe, very trustworthy. Against Buffalo, they're really going to need him, and this could turn into a shootout. So trust the game. Love Zay Flowers. And Jaden Reed is a must start when Jordan Love is healthy. He was so effective week 1, and although this is a bad matchup, I think there's room for a top 10 ranking on Jaden Reed, honestly. He has that much potential. So you have to start him. He's number 15. And I think you have to start Deebo Samuel as well. I didn't rank him earlier, so he moves up 50 spots. He's just too talented, and in this matchup, they could hang 40. I think he could put up multiple touchdowns if healthy. So I think you're starting him. I think you trust him the most. But Mike Evans with no Jalen McMillan moves up 7 spots. He's way safer for a touchdown without McMillan. So he's top 20. You're starting Mike Evans. I think you're also starting Amari Cooper now that you know he's fully healthy. You were a little worried back on Tuesday about it, but now no concerns. Amari Cooper moves up 5 spots. So Garrett Wilson gets jumped. I'm a little bit worried about the matchup, but he's still top 20. The talent should be safe enough. I do think he's better than Mike Evans, George Pickens, and DK Metcalf. I do think Garrett Wilson is more talented. So still going to trust him, still have him top 20. I think you have to keep starting him despite a rough start. Number 20, though, I have Diontae Johnson, who moves down a little bit because of the groin injury, but I think it's going to be okay. I'm still starting Diontae based on the volume. I'm more confident in Terry McLaurin without Austin Ekeler. After last week's game, I was probably a little too low on him at number 31. But Khalil Shakir has, I think, earned your trust as the only Bills receiver to start. He feels locked into the top 25. If this target share continues, the offense is just too high scoring. Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings, though, move down, and I really don't know who is the clear number 2 receiver. And one of them could emerge as the number 1. Like, Jennings has actually looked really good. Ayuk has not. However, Ayuk did get paid, and at some point you expect him to step up. So it's risky right now. I think they're low-end wide receiver 2s and more in the flex conversation. At 23-24, you don't have to start them if you have a lot of options. But number 25, I did downgrade Chris Olave because of his hamstring injury. He's a game time decision. And Drake London has historically been very bad in this matchup. So the two of them I think are very risky, and it's really just like name value that you're trusting. So outside the top 24 feels a little bit better at 25, 26. You might still start them though, depending on your situation. George Pickens, JSN, and Brian Thomas, though, stay put. However, Michael Wilson moves up 15 spots, knowing for sure that Trey McBride will not play. So love his upside, a great matchup, and I do think he has overtaken Greg Dortch in this target share. So that's the only variable. If Dortch wasn't there, I'd probably rank Michael Wilson above Ayuk. I think Michael Wilson would be excellent this week if there was no Greg Dortch. But still at number 30, I think he's a great option to plug into your lineup, some high upside and a decent floor with Michael Wilson. Number 31, though, I have Jacoby Myers now. He enters the chat with no Davante Adams. He should be the lead target for the Raiders. So he's interesting. I don't really trust Trey Tucker, though. They both jump Jamison Williams, though, so he moves down 2 spots. Darnell Mooney collectively gains 1 spot. Rome moves down 9 spots, though, because of Keenan Allen, who I have back-to-back here. They're in the top 35, so you could talk yourself into it. They're not the worst flex options, but they're just not that safe because the other one is present on the field. So we'll learn a lot from this situation if Rome has overtaken him, but it's just a little bit too much of a gamble. I only trust DJ Moore with Allen on the field. Jordan Addison, though, also gets entered into the rankings. I basically had Naylor here earlier in the week, so kind of a 1-for-1 swap. T. Higgins, though, gets jumped, and Christian Watson, I do think, is a top 40 play with Jordan Love available. So he's more interesting, much more touchdown upside with him than anybody else moving forward. And you could make the argument you have to start him. But they jump Tyler Lockett, Rashid Shaheed, still kind of the same opinion on them. Waddle is a bit more interesting, but only number 41 with Tyler Huntley. I still only trust one weapon for Huntley. And that's why Ridley and Hopkins get taken down. Some guys jump them. But Romeo Doubs enters the top 45 with Love as well. That is a safer floor with Dobbs, one of his go-to targets in the red zone dating back to last year. Other than that, though, I dropped down Yoshivas and Xavier Worthy a little bit. They feel risky, and it's just not too safe. But Greg Dortch does enter the top 53 because there's no McBride. He could have that Michael Wilson role, but Michael Wilson is more of a touchdown guy, and that's why I do prefer Michael Wilson over Greg Dortch. But don't be shocked if Dortch completely ruins the Michael Wilson call. In DFS, I'd be interested in Dortch for a very low price, but I'd still prefer Michael Wilson. He's just a bit more of an obvious plug into your lineup. Jalen Naylor, the last relevant name who moves down. With Addison healthy, you cannot start him. He drops 13 spots, but is still a little interesting from a touchdown standpoint. So a lot of changes at wide receiver. Let's move on to quarterback, though, where I did not rank Tyler Huntley yesterday. That was a mistake by me. And he's top 20. I do think the offense merits some interesting consideration. He's got at least one weapon in Tyreek. Maybe he gets Waddle involved too. And he's also has a good run game that does catch passes. He also runs it himself. So Mike McDaniel could dial it up for him. I think he's in the same tier as guys like Rodgers and Geno Smith. We will see, but low end quarterback 2 production. Only in Superflex would I start Tyler Huntley. So everyone behind him moves down with no Tim Boyle. And at tight end, I did rank Elijah Higgins top 20. I'd rather go Elijah Higgins than Colby Parkinson. So with no McBride, someone has to step up. You could see a touchdown here, but I doubt it. I'm probably not starting him. And if Kamara doesn't play, then Taysom Hill would enter the top 12. But I do think Kamara does play. I do not trust Taysom Hill at all. At defense, though, I did give an upgrade to the Browns defense because Myles Garrett was completely taken off of the injury report. And I do trust them without Davante Adams. It is an better matchup for sure. They should be able to shut down the quarterback of the Raiders. So they move up 3 spots, but in part because the Titans move down 10, and I really don't trust them as much against Tyler Huntley. I still think they're interesting. They have a good secondary, but it's not the Tim Boyle matchup I expected earlier in the week. So I was wrong to rank them highly. I'm definitely adjusting my take. I think the Dolphins win this game as well. So Titans nowhere near as safe. They drop down 10 spots. And I do think the Rams are a bit more interesting because Caleb is still a rookie, could still make some mistakes, and the run game has looked bad. So the Rams could get some turnovers. They have a bit of appeal, but they also have a bad defense of their own. I'm not dying to start them, but they do move up 7 spots this low, it's not that big of a deal. The Jaguars, though, I'm dropping 7 spots. Now that Mixon is healthy, I don't trust them anywhere near as much. In division, they will probably get wrecked. So those are the changes at defense. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And here on the screen are my new updated top 20 quarterback and tight end and defensive rankings. The final ranks entering week 4. And if you still have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. But now here are my running back and wide receiver rankings. And the tiers are broken down by the color-coded lines. Anyone in above the purple line, I think, is a must start, will probably go over 20 points. Anyone over the blue line is probably good for at least 16 points. And anyone over the green line, I think, is still in your lineup good for probably 12 plus points. So if you have any players on running back or wide receiver above the green line, I am definitely considering them at worst number 2 options at the position that you should be starting in your lineup this week. After that, between green and orange, we enter the flex conversation. So these are the players I'm really considering this week, mostly at receiver. I think it falls off a cliff at running back. After Tony Pollard, there are very few players I trust at all. And even Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard, ETN have some risk to them as well. So Jerome Ford, I think, is the cutoff point. Ramondre Stevenson and down, I am trying to bench if I can at running back. At receiver, though, I think it is deeper. As always, there are more options to begin with. But I think once you hit Christian Watson, you have hit the cutoff point. There is not much of an argument to be made after Christian Watson. There is a lot more risk involved with all of those players. So that's how I view it. A lot more receivers I trust, but it does get very shaky. Once you hit George Pickens, JSN, and Brian Thomas, I think you have entered the risk zone. Hopefully the touchdown hits. Without it, you may get screwed. But good luck to you. If you still have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will answer them before kickoff. But I am going to make some adjustments as well to my win-loss picks. I'm calling some audibles here because of all of these injuries that I did not know were the case back on Monday. I'm changing my call on Atlanta. The more I look into Derek Carr in this matchup, I'm not excited. I do not trust him to throw a touchdown, and I do worry about the health of Kamara and Chris Olave entering this game. So it's in the Falcons' home stadium. I'm going to take the Falcons. I think this team splits the series, but instead of the road team winning, I'm going to go with the home team this time. I will take the Falcons, not the Saints, in this game. I'm also going to take the Texans. I made the pick before I watched the Jags play Monday, and the Jags just look so atrocious. I'm not going to do it. I also did not expect Joe Mixon to play, so that's definitely swaying me in favor of Houston. I'm definitely picking Stroud over Trevor Lawrence. The Jags look terrible at this point. So bad call. No thank you. I'm not sticking with the Jags. Give me the Texans in this one. I'm actually going to stick with the Raiders. I know it feels weird, but I just don't trust Deshaun Watson at all. And I'm picking this one to be the contrarian, not the Jags one. Let's go with the Raiders to win, the Jags to lose. And then the last game I'm changing is Miami. Now that I know Tyler Huntley is the quarterback, I trust them more, and I will take them over Will Levis. It's Will Levis at the end of the day. He's going to mess up. He's going to make some mistakes, and I do prefer Mike McDaniel's coaching by far. So I trust Tyreek Hill. Give me Miami over Tennessee, the Falcons over the Saints, and the Texans over the Jags. Otherwise, everything else is the same. So I made 3 changes to 16 games. I need to get this thing right. I have not looked good the first 3 weeks, and I want to be more accurate. So I changed my opinion there, and I also am changing 2 of my picks against the spread. I originally gave you the Titans plus 1.5 and the Jags plus 5.5, and I don't think either of them win. So nope, scrap those and give me the Vikings plus 2.5. They're underdogs, and I think they will win straight up. But even if they don't, it could be a 1-point game, and I think 2.5 is valuable. Give me the points with the Vikings to win straight up. But the Rams get plus 3, and they're going to find a way to keep it close. It'll look kind of like last week. Going to come down to a field goal like it did against the Niners. So trust the coaching of McVay and Stafford at quarterback. While I do think the Bears still win, I think it's closer than 3 points. Give me the Rams to at least push on this line. Give me the Rams and the points. So those are the changes. I'm taking the Niners minus 9.5. I'm sticking with that one. I'm sticking with Seattle plus 4. I'm also sticking with Denver plus 7.5. And give me the Rams plus 3, the Vikings plus 2.5. That's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I'm happy to answer them, and I'll see you next time. My name is Adam Riancho. Thank you for watching. Nice and blunt.